Welcome, everyone, for our listeners. This is episode 31 to the Gwen Effect podcast. And I'm already getting teary-eyed. We have Kyla Thompson is the mother of BELLABRAVE. And she is a young TikTok star whose fearless medical journey with multiple rare health conditions inspired millions around the world. Despite facing unimaginable challenges from birth, Bella's strength and determination not only defied the odds, but also helped advance medical understanding, paving the way for better healthcare for future children. We know her courage in the face of adversity and her ability to bring joy and hope to others continues to resonate deeply, even after her passing in 2024 at just 10 years old. As a content creator and speaker and advocate, her mother, Kyla, uses her powerful platforms to raise awareness for rare diseases, support families navigating similar challenges, and share meaningful lessons of resilience, hope, and love. Alongside her husband, Lyle, and their son, is it Waylon?
Yeah.
Yeah, love that name.
Yeah.
Continues to heal her heart in ways she's never imagined. So with further ado, I'm so happy to say the Gwen Effect and the BELLABRAVE have finally come together.
Yeah.
And what powerful babes we have.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. I'm so happy we could meet. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, Kyla and I have been talking a little bit off and on since last summer. And then finally we were just like, you know what? Let's pick a date and move forward with this. And I know myself and many others are super excited to tune in on this one. You have a lot of supporters from around the world, and especially Ontario. So I just want you to know that.
Thanks.
We are here in your corner. So I guess we'll kind of get to it a little bit. Can you start, for the people that don't know your story, can you take us back to kind of the beginning of everything and kind of what were the early signs of things just weren't your typical normal, or what is even normal, but I guess what was the beginning of your daughter's health journey?
Yeah, the beginning was very lots of hidden unknowns that took probably just over 2 years to fully understand all three of her rare diagnoses and discover what they were. I didn't have any inkling. I had a great pregnancy with her, and the only thing that we kind of figured out much later that was kind of a clue that she would maybe have dwarfism was her growth kind of stopped in my second trimester.
Okay.
But when they did all the checks and they even put me through an MRI, my doctor was very thorough, and Bella was just like having a dance party in my belly, always moving.
Of course she was.
Oh yeah. She was like tiny, but not like, she was very proportionate. And so they couldn't see anything from these ultrasounds and MRIs that would send life-threatening or any rare condition. And so I went on to have, just like carry on with my pregnancy, and like everything was pretty typical, from like my water breaking to at like 2 a.m. in my bathroom to contractions starting slow and then slowly progressing. It was like textbook, ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, which is great for a first time mom going through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the hospital, and I went through like 33 hours of labor.
Wow.
And I wasn't really progressing. And they were like, okay, well now you have a fever, and because your water broke like 2 days ago, we need to like get you into like a C-section. So she was born via C-section, and she came out screaming at everybody. What did you do to me? Why am I here?
I'm not ready.
Yeah, it was really, I remember the moment that I had a C-section, so I couldn't see her right away. And I think it was my like, I was going to say esthetician.
It's Monday.
Yeah, anesthesiologist. Was like, oh, it looks like it's a girl. And I was like, oh. And then,
So you didn't know the sex of Bella when she was born?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay. How exciting. Okay.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. And then we didn't know with Waylon either. They were both surprises. And then from that was like my second of bliss. I got to look at her for a second, and then they took her away with my husband and sewed me up. And that was the start of the bombarding worries and stress from the doctors on my husband. I didn't know at the time.
Of course.
And he kind of kept that from me because he didn't want to stress me out with everything. He just basically got dumped on him about his daughter, his newborn daughter. But what was happening in the room while they were fixing me up was she was born with her right wrist and thumb were pretty much flush with her forearm. And so it got like stuck in my womb and didn't get a chance. Like she had tendon and nerve damage there. And so she was born with like a smaller right hand. She of course she was smaller, but she was still 6 pounds, 11 ounces.
Wow. That's decent.
Yeah. And so she was very proportionate and like, long story short, her dwarfism took a backseat to all of the health problems she was having.
Yes.
But later, like when working with geneticists, we found out that she had cartilage hair hypoplasia. But it was very hard to diagnose that because typically children with dwarfism have a larger forehead and kind of bowed legs. Mm-hmm. And much shorter arms, but she didn't have any of those features. She only had shortened root bones, which was from her shoulder to her elbow.
Yes.
And her hips to her knees. And so she's very, very proportionate for this diagnosis. And so it was really hard to diagnose that. So she's just itty bitty.
Now, was this, if I'm correct, was it in California you finally received the diagnosis from a specialist?
It was a California CHH specialist who, he was like the only one in the world that had like, they told me like her Calgary specialists were like, this is who you send her full skeletal survey to be like, okay, like we know she's smaller. We know she has some sort of dwarfism. What is going on? Yeah. And he was the specialist to look over her skeletal survey and be like, yes. And he reported back, like, she's very hard to diagnose because she's so proportionate.
Yeah.
And I think it was something like less than like 3% of kiddos or people with CHH that have as much proportion as she did for that diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a big reason why as she grew, she would actually be 6 or 7, but she looked like she was 1 or 2.
Okay.
So then I would always call her my little genius because then she'd talk to people in full sentences and they thought she was like 10 months old.
It was deceiving.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
She drew a lot of attention that way. People were very confused. But yeah, so the start was really, to me, I was like, I have a new baby girl. She started breastfeeding. And it wasn't until she was 3 days old that she hadn't pooped and she started vomiting.
Okay.
And they air ambulanced her to our closest hospital, which was like a 20-minute flight from where we live to Saskatoon. Mm-hmm. And from there, like that night she had surgery. That night, the surgeon thankfully understood what Hirschsprung's was, that bowel disease. And at that point, we thought that was the only problem.
So is this number 2 of the diagnosis as of right now?
Yeah.
Like the rare, okay.
Yeah, Hirschsprung. So basically we only thought we were dealing with a bowel disease. And the surgeon was very confident. He was like, I've seen this lots. We take a section of the dead colon. She has an ostomy for a while. We wait till she's good. Her immune system's better. And then we're back up and she's good to go.
Okay.
But we didn't know at the time she had no immune system.
Yes.
And we didn't figure out that diagnosis till she was 11 months old. So it's a part of the reason why we spent the first 2 years of her life in hospital without going home. She was always sick and we didn't realize she was getting all these bowel surgeries with no immune system.
Okay, so there was nothing to kind of combat it and fight it.
Yeah.
Did she ever have go through asbestos, infection or anything like that?
Septic shock?
Yeah.
She in her life, in her 10 years of life, she suffered septic shock 5 times.
Oh my goodness.
And the first septic shock, she was only 4 months old when we realized at 11 months old that she had no immune system, they could not explain how she survived it, because kids born with SCID don't survive the common cold.
No,
At that
no.
point, she had survived 3 bowel surgeries and septic shock. And they were like, they literally told me it's a miracle she's alive.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To be so little itty bitty, and like bowel surgery, I feel like isn't an easy thing. Like that's a major organ that you're kind of playing around with and maneuvering. I know when Gwendolyn was sick in the NICU with neck a
Yeah.
couple of times, the bowel doesn't like to be played with, is what I've learned, and it will just
Yeah.
completely kind of shut down and not play around, right?
They were confident she had Hirschsprung's, but they didn't know what kind. So neck came up for Bella quite a bit. But basically, like, the miracle comes in a sense that when you're doing bowel surgery, you're exposing the blood system to stool.
Oh yeah.
It's like extreme bacteria, and she had no B cells and no T cells to fight. No B cells to fight bacteria and infection, and no T cells to fight viruses. And so it was really a miracle that she survived. And she is a fighter.
Well, I was gonna say
she's
she's like literally from day like one, and that's a lot like with these kiddos. And I've realized a lot of them are so tiny, but they're so mighty. The resilience that they do have and that they already have driven in them from the moment they're born. It's incredible. What was it like for you navigating those moments? Like, I know for me, people will ask me all the time, like, and I'm like, I just blacked out. Like the shock was kind of just kicked in and protected me. And now I'm just starting to unravel my story a little bit more and getting into depth through therapy of, how scary those moments were. How was it for you, navigating the healthcare systems when answers were so like far out there?
Yeah, we were dealing with we were dealing with our surgeon. We didn't even have a GI specialist.
Oh my goodness.
We were just thankful that our surgeon had experience with Hirschsprung's. But like we later found out, the type of Hirschsprung's, all 3 rare conditions Bella was born with, had never been seen before to the extent that they were. They were very, very rare in each of their own. And then just the fact that they were combined had never been seen before. So to start with our little local hospital in Saskatchewan, to go to a larger children's hospital in Alberta, to then go to Sick Kids, like #1 pediatric hospital in the world, and then have Sick Kids still be like, what? We've never seen this. That is the most daunting feeling. And Bella didn't get to Sick Kids till she was 6, and they needed to assess her for a bowel transplant. But when you have staff at that caliber tell you they don't know, that is really difficult to swallow. But the way that Sick Kids does it is they do it with like, we might not know this now, but we're going to figure it out. And they have so much confidence that I never got that from any other surgeon or team before.
Yeah.
They were, and it was just like the confidence they have really it really helped settle you, because the first like year in Saskatoon wasn't even a children's hospital, right? Didn't even have a bowel like specialist, didn't even have an immune specialist. And so like, kudos to those teams there, like dealing with a child who has such rare conditions unknown to the entire world. And they kept her alive. They kept her alive to get her to the specialists that could help us even more.
That needed to see that. Now, people that don't know, how big is the area that you are in, or that you travel to for to be in the hospital?
Yeah, so Swift Current, we have I think we're 15 to 20,000 people. We're like a small city.
Yes.
Real tiny city. And we're about 3 hours from Saskatoon. Okay. And Saskatoon is and we're about 2 hours from Regina, and they have our 2 largest hospitals.
Okay.
And when Bella was born in 2013, they had just started building our now children's hospital, which is Pattison Children's.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say earlier too, when Bella started, in it was called RUH in Saskatoon, we're on the pediatric ward or the NICU. I really feel like, I was really like, as a medical mom, like a pioneer into the family-centered care and into accessing resources
Really.
that I don't think any other medical parents at the time knew how to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't want that to sound like conceited, but just building my friendship with other medical moms at that time, all of us dealing with the same thing in 3 different provinces, and having their experience with children's hospitals and my experience without one. And then just, we all kind of were like, wait a minute, this needs to happen in this way, and you can ask for this. And I really feel like it was kind of like around that time, 2014, was really kind of like the pioneer year for like medical parents.
Well, and and I always say this too, there is no greater love than a mother's love, than a mother's beast, like, and especially when dealing within the medical field, there's a lot of controversy around science and, having that against behind the child's diagnosis. But I think a mother's intuition is far greater than any kind of scientific thing out there, in my opinion. I mean, the two, when they work together, is a battlefield. But I know for myself, and maybe for you too, and your medical friends, it was probably very challenging at times trying to navigate with your babies with so many unknowns.
Yeah, at that time, I really feel Bella we were in the hospital for 10 plus years. So
yes,
it's like I could see the shift. And so in the beginning, it was very like, how dare you ask to talk to the surgeon? Or it was very just like, what do you mean you're going to be this demanding with your nurse or the charge nurse, or learn what that means, or learn how the system works, or question their credibility, or question the way they're going about things for your child. Questioning at that time, I would take notes, I would look, I would research, I wouldn't Google.
Yeah.
I knew I knew that would be a big miss if I came
you
up
go
to the
down a
doctor.
rabbit hole of WTFs when you Google, right?
Not only that, but it was like, I took very seriously to get my information from like face to face with the specialists.
Absolutely.
That's why I kind of was looked at as like, oh, this demanding parent. But I'm like, well, no, you can't fight me on that, because I'm not sitting here in my room all day Googling and then coming to you with that. I'm asking you to your face. You're supposed to be the expert. Give me the facts, because my kid's not fixed yet. And I think in the beginning it was taken as like, oh, disrespectful. And then I lived that transformation of like the medical system being like, wait a minute, we need family-centered care.
Absolutely.
These parents and caregivers are the ones that see the signs and the symptoms 24/7 that we're missing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there was that switch to like, no, we need them. We need to give them the access that they need to ask the questions they need and tell us the things at the time that it happens, not like 3 or 4 days later.
Such a force. Like you said, I mean, you're with them 24/7. You are seeing those things, that they're hearing the alarms going off and taking the pressures and, reading the blood labs and all of these things, but you're not watching the alarms. You're watching your child. I think that's such a powerful thing in itself. So I can definitely resonate with that altogether, for sure. And it scares me, and it worries me, because there are some mothers or some parents that there is very much still not that centered kind of care for family and the patients. And some mothers don't know how to advocate because they're made to feel like they aren't allowed to be proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's such an important thing when you are proactive. The recovery for that patient is such a broader success compared to, when you're not being proactive or having that rapport with specialists.
Yeah.
I can totally resonate with that.
And I could see both sides too. It was really, I don't know another word to use other than traumatic, but it was really traumatic to spend 16, 18 hours by Bella's cribside and bedside and be in a room with 4 other patients who either their caregiver or their parent was never there, and it was all up to the nurse.
Yeah.
And our nurse working 16-hour shifts, they can't be by that child's bedside 24/7 when they have patients in other rooms and reports they got to write up and handover they got to give. And I would see the parents that couldn't be there. I would see like the children and how that affected them. Because I'm living day to day
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
months and then years. And then I'd see the ones that would have to work,
Mhm.
like, or the single parents that have to work and they
Or
can
the
only be
parents who,
there.
yeah, who have babies at home.
Yeah,
Ooh,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And so it's like they can only be there for an hour or two a day.
Yeah.
And so I could see all of that and realize, okay, I'm valuable here in a sense that I am making notes, I'm writing things down, I'm here and able to talk to them face to face and figure this out
Mhm.
so my child can go home. And a lot of other caregivers and parents didn't get that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm the same way, like Gwendolyn was my first as well. And it goes back to that. Pregnancy was normal, right? And I remember when I went into early labor, I looked at the nurse and I said, this isn't my birth plan. And she said, honey, there is no such thing as a birth plan. And I think that's where society does us super wrong is there's such a made up fragment of, a child's going to be born, you're going to go home, you're going to be discharged, it's going to be like baby moon, it's going to be perfect bliss, and then when you're faced with conditions, and it's in the thick of it. And from what you're saying, it was diagnosis after diagnosis after, how many surgeries did Bella have in total?
To be honest, I lost count, but I know it was around 30. She had major bowel surgeries, but then she also had, it was a surgery in a sense every time to put in a Broviac or a central line, because she always had to have them put in her chest or her neck or her arms or her
Yes.
leg.
Yes.
And so for her, like, so the reason for that is her being born with dwarfism. She was so tiny, and she had very little real estate is what we called it,
Yeah.
for like, and so here's a child born with very little vessels, tiny vessels, yet she needs IV fluids and TPN to survive because her bowels don't work.
Okay.
So it was really difficult to get an IV in her. And so they would always do surgery to put one in permanently.
Mm-hmm.
And that going in, putting it in, having to take it out, because things would come up, either it got infected or we were like, oh, we're going to go home now, she's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It would scar the vessel every time. And so that eventually led to, like, you have four main, in your SVC is the large vessel that goes right above your heart.
Yes.
And you have four main areas, like branches to use, and all of her scarred up. And so it got to the point, like, right before her, like when she was like after 6, and that was a big reason why she got listed for a bowel transplant. Not only because she was in bowel failure, but she only had one access left.
Okay.
And if she didn't get that bowel transplant before that access scarred up and gave out, it would have been a very difficult.
Because she was on TPN for quite a while before, am I correct? Like before she received the bowel transplant, because she couldn't digest anything, or
yeah, like hers was different. It was up and down. There was lots of time periods where she could eat orally and drink orally, but her bowels would at random dump fluids. So it's like, imagine you had diarrhea for 10 days and couldn't keep, you're dumping liters and liters and liters of fluid. So her tiny little body, she at her heaviest weight, she weighed like 14 kilograms. And sometimes her bowels would dump 2 liters of fluid in like a couple hours. So dehydration was like horrible risk for her. So she always had to have that IV, whether she was getting TPN or not. We had to have that IV in case a dumping time happened and I had to give her fluids.
Absolutely. And were you able to do like fluids at home, or was that something that was immediately okay?
Yeah, they trained me. Yeah, it was, if they wouldn't have trained me to be able to do that, she would have never been able to come home.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that's a newer thing for parents to be able to come home trained. From like when Sick Kids, Gwendolyn came home with the G tube and a bunch of other things, but I had to go, I don't know if it was the same with you, but you almost had to take like a course on it and kind of pass this course and then be allowed to be discharged with the medical things, which is so scary in itself.
You're
right?
basically being trained to be an RN at home without the 5 years experience.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I was trained in 2 weeks,
Oh,
and
yeah.
my husband and and I mean, we were in hospital so much, I got a lot of practice.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. And you
but
often get that joke like, "Oh, you can take over my job," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't
yeah,
know if I really want to," but
yeah,
because you are there, you know the signs and what the symptoms and what to kind of look for and what to do in every situation, which is like, I don't really want to run off that much adrenaline,
yeah,
all the
yeah,
time. I give it to them, and I think our especially with how crappy our healthcare system is now, I feel for the nurses because they really are angels on earth. I know they were for
yeah,
me, and seeing just what they do because being there literally from morning to night and then on, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, were there, any like going on that, were there any particular like doctors or nurses or specialists that kind of um, stood out to you or spoke out to you during your journey in hospital with Bella?
In a good way or bad?
Yeah, I have a few. I get yeah, a good way, and
Yeah,
yeah, was there anyone that really stuck with you
yeah,
throughout the journey?
yeah, definitely. I need to get him on my podcast. Bella, yeah, Bella's first GI specialist in Calgary was Dr. Gary Gallant, and he was the first specialist, like not only a GI specialist, but the first doctor to validate my binders of notes and my years of diligent like recording.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. So this is after a year in hospital with Bella in Saskatchewan. We finally get transferred to Calgary, and it's like, okay, Saskatchewan gave it their all. They have what's going on with our child,
Yeah,
and I had all these notes and diagrams and like basically summarized like a year in
there you
hospital of
go,
like,
more or less. Yeah.
yeah. And he was like, he heard about it from like the nurse that was just like, you need to talk to this mom. And when I talked to him and I showed him everything, he's like, can I take these? And I remember the day he like took them and like hoarded them, and he's like this is gold,
Yeah.
basically. I guess.
Who wouldn't appreciate that, really, though?
Yeah. And it just was like the first time I ever had a specialist or a doctor like validate what I was trying to do for my daughter, and instead of just using their own medical knowledge to try and figure out her rare bowel disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, and then not only that, he just had a way of explaining things to me in as a parent, and you're just in this desperate, like emotional, exhausted state. And he could reassure me, give me confidence, help me feel better in this like dire situation, and basically set me up for strength to go through more trial and error to help fix my daughter's conditions.
And I think that says a lot. Like, give me a little more strength to
Yeah.
move forward. Like, just give me like even, an ounce to just carry on through the next little bit to where we need to get to. And
Yeah.
I think like that's so important. I speak to a lot of like med students in their first years, and to plant that seed, I'm always like, just be human. Just recognize that, we're in this situation that really sucks. Like it's not a fun thing. Like to be blunt, it fucking is awful. So if you can like, not only sympathize, but be empathetic and just sit with us and not try to take it away, that like it just immediately in that moment, I feel like does something for medical parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're
Huge.
validated and you're looked as, this is horrible, this sucks, we're going to work with you, not
Yeah.
against you, but with you to figure out what we
Yeah.
need to figure out to move forward.
Yeah.
I guess that like leads me into like my next question. Um, for somebody who is a newly medical parent or trying to navigate like in the thick of it as we once were, what would you say to them? Like, what would you give? Like, what would advice, would you give to them to kind of get that next ounce to move forward?
I would say like be prepared. I mean, I hope It's hard because I want to be like, be prepared for pushback when you sound smarter than the medical professional. So in knowing that, try and approach them with less anger, less hostility, less frustration, as hard as it is to swallow in the moment when you see your child in pain.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can do that, you're going to get a lot more support and a lot more resources at hand, mm-hmm. as hard as it is. Because I've been there, you know, yelling, screaming, saying mean things because I'm just like enraged.
Yeah.
And what they're asking is just going to cause my kid more pain, and I can't see past that when I've been working tirelessly to prevent pain for her.
Absolutely.
And as hard as it is, I would say try and swallow that, and try and be smarter than them in your questioning and your discussions with them, in a respectful way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you're going to get a lot more support and help from them, a lot more reassurance, because they're going to see you as like a smart, thorough medical parent, mm-hmm. versus, you know, this unknowledgeable person trying to question their specialty.
Their ability, right? Their ability of what they're doing.
As hard as it is, I learned that the hard way, and that's really what you got to do, especially if you're a long-term family in the hospital.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're gonna be with them anyways, right? It's not like, and from the sounds of it, like we weren't really able to pick and choose because you didn't have a lot of resources where you were at that time anyway. So
yeah,
I get that. Like when you are admitted into hospital for more than, you know, your typical week, you are with these people 24/7. They are now your family, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I've learned too, like passive aggressiveness doesn't work out in your favor. No. I mean, yeah, you spooked Mama Bear and now she's angry. But again, you know, it's so hard being a mom and allowing that, like, to just like allow them to kind of take control in different aspects because you're the mother, you're the protector.
And when you're in that situation, ask for reassurance. Be vulnerable. Be like, okay, you're telling me this is going to cause my child pain, but on the upside, this is going to fix a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Be wrong. I remember that was something I wish I would have done more, is been like, okay, instead of when I heard them say something that suggests Bella was going to be in more pain, right away, my walls would go up and I'd say, no, we're going to find a different way to do this. Yeah. Because she can't go through the 8th poke today or the 10th x-ray today or this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, there's got to be a way to prevent this pain for her. We're on year 2. You know what I mean? So I was very defensive. And so what I learned from that is upfront, ask for reassurance. Be like, ask for all the possible routes. Be like, okay, if we do this, what's going to happen and what's the outcome? Absolutely. And how long is the pain going to last with this option? Or is there a pain-free option here? And it's like the things that I would discover, like the ways, like the multiple ways you can not only prepare your child for blood work or an IV start, is like, it blew my, and I was like, I wish I owned her. I could have saved her so much pain.
Well, that's just it. Like, and the only, desensitize things.
Yeah. Like, don't like brush things over, or like you said, desensitize, but like, give me reassurance, give me the most probable outcomes you can, and ways to support me and my daughter through it.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the BRAIN acronym?
No.
So
maybe.
I know there's probably like there's a lot of moms like and dads or caregivers listening right now that are in the medical field, but it was something that I learned at Sick Kids actually from a parent, and it's the BRAIN acronym, and B stands for what are the benefits of this procedure, what are the risks, R would be what are the risks, A is what are the alternatives, I like what is my intuition saying, and then N for no, like what if we just sit on it and wait, then what kind of thing. So when I have parents reach out to me and it's like, I don't know what to do in this situation, I'm like, honestly, this was something I learned from, a mom, and it was kind of the best thing for me to resort to because I would go to doctors and be like, okay, let's look at this brain acronym, like how can we address each one here? Like what is the best result kind of thing. So
yeah, there was I kind of did that in my own sense, but maybe in a hysterical mom sense. But there was Bella, just because of her loss of vascular access, blood work and IVs were so freaking difficult. And the trauma that would come from sometimes 8 or 10 attempts.
Absolutely.
It was like my mission daily to prevent her from this pain. And so there was a lot of times where I would get to the end and I'd be like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of times where it's like the bittersweet part of this medical mom life is proving the specialists wrong, being like, oh, actually, yeah, we don't need that blood work, or we could combine this blood work with other things we need that's going to help us figure out this problem. So we don't need to do it daily.
Yeah.
We could do it in 3 days, or we could do it just like once today and once on Friday. Like, and if I wouldn't have figured out how to say no in that moment,
mm-hmm.
it would have been daily blood work just because that's easier for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think to note on that as well, with like the whole, again, I feel like every specialist you meet, you have to retell your story too. And that's the hardest part. And I finally got to the point where, I was explaining to my therapist, like, this is really triggering for me, having to go back through it all when, we're being readmitted. And she goes, then tell them to read her file. That's why they take patient files. Like, they can take that moment to sit down and read those files. So I finally got the courage, and I was like, you have her file right there, right? Yeah, I do. Okay, well, maybe can we read that right now? Because I'm really not mentally okay. I'm trying to keep her at bay and trying to keep myself afloat. Do you think you could take a minute to just read, that? Because I don't want to be re-triggered again and again and again, because there's
you're nicer than me. You're nicer than me. I was like, you're the 5th person in this room today. I'm like, I'm not talking about, like, I was like, no, go read that before you come back in this room.
Well, there's been times.
I also utilized, like, I figured that part out really early. I mean, we were just like, well, we were constantly in. And so there was one point where my binder, I had the list of all of like the specialties Bella had, like everything from like physio, OT, PT to like surgery, GI, immunology, respirology, nephrology. Like there's like 30.
Yes.
And sometimes like a new resident would come in the room and I'd be like, see this binder? See this list? You're number 6. You're number 6. I'm not explaining this to you again. I'm like, go read your file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just it. And it's exhausting in itself.
Yeah.
I would tap back into that. And like you said, I had a binder too. I had a binder too. And I would, I would color code the shit out of it. And you're a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have, I work at a college with students. So I can relate to the whole, like, keeping everything organized and being part of that binder, because like, look what I did, look what I created. And it's a lot easier for them to utilize anyways. I feel like if I was a medical staff seeing a binder, I'd be like, oh yeah, just like that your specialist said, your GI surgeon specialist, actually like recognize how important this is. So we're on your journey, like navigating everything. And you mentioned an important key point in your journey with Bella was she had received an donor. Bowel. Can you kind of talk about how that worked and the process that came to that?
Yeah, Bella actually had she had 2 donors. She had a donor for her bone marrow transplant, and that was to help treat she was born with that immune disorder SCID.
Mm-hmm.
So that was basically no immune system, and so she needed a bone marrow donor to give her an immune system because my husband and I were not a match.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course she was my firstborn, so she didn't have a sibling to check.
Yeah.
And so we had to go to the donor registry and look worldwide for her donor for her bone marrow. And that happened when she was 15 months old, and her donor was from Germany.
So you were able to connect with them?
Yeah, so the way the process works is you're not allowed to personally connect for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
All of their special, reasons that they have that keep both sides safe, the recipient and the donor. And it's a living donor, right? When you're a bone marrow donor, you're a living donor. So there's a lot of like legalities around it, but we wrote anonymous letters that went through our medical teams, and we kept in touch. And then finally, at the 2-year mark, we got to meet on Facebook and give each other our contact information. And that was great. I found out she was a nurse from Germany, and yeah, she had 2 little boys of her own. And yeah, we've kept in touch. We sent gifts back and forth. So that was really special for Bella. And then when Bella got listed for her bowel transplant, that was in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And that wait was 3 years till she got a donor. And so by that point, we were well known on TikTok and socials. And so I knew it was the same process where it's like things need to be kept private for a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I knew that socials would maybe change that. And so I had a lot of talks with her medical team, and they're like, okay, like you can't like say anything online. You can't like, we can't give you any information. You can't post anything online about anything. Like I couldn't even post, I think I was supposed to wait even something like, they were like, and they weren't like, you have to, they were just like, give it at least 24 hours before you say anything, just so nobody can match up timelines and stuff.
Okay. And this was with her donor for the bowel.
Yeah. For
Okay.
her bowel.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was very, very respectful of that, knowing how you're supposed to go through that, because it's supposed to be the same kind of weight. But having the socials that we did, and the rarity of a bowel transplant. I later found out through Trillium Gift of Life, which is where the donors come to, because even our surgical team is not allowed to have the information that they have.
Okay.
Yeah, they get the organ and they do the surgery, and they know nothing else.
Nothing more.
Yeah, nothing more, like personal details and stuff. So they're not even allowed to connect with the donor family, because it was a little boy, Waylon Sam from Ontario, was Bella's donor, and he was 4 at the time.
So
same name,
same name as your son,
and same age. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And the reason I figured this all out soon was because I had lots of messages from his mom family. So like, I think sisters, cousins, aunties, uncles. And then I finally got to a point where I found her message too, but they were like, we know Waylon is Bella's donor. We're like 99% sure. And so I gave it some time before I responded, because I just going through a lot.
Yeah.
But we eventually connected, and it was really sweet, because we were supposed to go through the 2-year process of like not being allowed to know each other's personal story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when we finally connected online and figured, pretty sure, she's like, I'm pretty sure my son was Bella's donor. Pretty sure Bella was the recipient. The only way we could actually figure that out was if we wrote each other a letter, because we're allowed to give anonymous letters.
Okay. And
so we connected on Facebook, and we had agreed that we would take a picture of her. And I told her, I was like, okay, this is my letter. I'm going to put a little sticker right here, and so that like this is from me.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't allowed to put my name, nothing. It was just like yeah. So then when she received my letter and sent me the photo that I had confirmed it was from me, then it was so emotional. And we had such a beautiful relationship from then on.
Of course.
And I'm really, really thankful for that connection. And I later found out like her little boy was able to donate his heart and his liver, I believe, to save 2 other lives. His bowels went to Bella. And yeah, it was just, I'm just so thankful that we were able to connect. And I
think that is special. Like you hear those stories of, somebody donating their heart and then their family being able to listen to that heart again, and someone living's body. I think that's like such a beautiful, beautiful thing to have in itself, like outside of the whole donating as well.
Well, and just like the bowels are very, very, very difficult to like. So Bella had the entire bowel, so small intestine and colon. And that is very, very rare. I think it had been something like 13 years since they saw a transplant like that happen successfully.
And that's at Sick Kids as well. She received that.
Okay. Yeah. And so to have that kind of transplant happen, they just like, it's very, very rare. To have a heart transplant or a lung transplant is much, much more common. And that has always been so hard for me to grasp, like, especially during that 3-year wait where it's like, if Bella's line fails before she gets these bowels, it's going to be horrible, horrible, horrible for her. And just to live with that for 3 years. And then on top of that, see all these other kids get these hearts and lungs and extraordinary organs so easily. I was just like, oh, like it's just like a punch to the gut.
Oh, absolutely.
So for this miracle of a surgery to even happen, and then for it to happen so successfully for Bella, like the surgeons were amazed. They were like, it was the most perfect match. They were able to do the surgery in like half the time they normally do. And yeah, she was in and out in like 8 hours asking for something to eat and drink.
How amazing is that? Like into it and not being able to eat or drink, and then 8 hours after. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is. How was the recovery for like with an organ such as that?
It was really fast. She was up and walking within 6 days. Eating, I think she was allowed to eat like soft solids within like a couple days. And like, it just blows my mind. Like we were like walking to the mall within like 2 weeks. Of course, staying very protected, but I just like, like
being able to do these things that you couldn't
do these things.
Normal kid things.
And the biggest part of it is, I mean, she had dealt with pain, like bloating, distension, vomiting. It had been, like 9 years of that every day almost.
Yeah.
Her bowels were so cruel to her. She wanted that surgery. She was ready for it. She wasn't scared at all. She knew it meant a life with no pain, and it gave her that, which was the best part of it all. Her recovery was amazing. She had her bowel surgery in August, and she was in school in grade 5 at the Ronald McDonald House, like come September. So like it was amazing that way. And I hate that it's so tainted by how what caused her to pass away, because her bowel surgery was 100% successful.
Yeah. More
successful than bowel surgeries in the past for pediatrics. And so to have her pass away due to something unrelated is just with her lungs. It makes me so heartbroken to not be able to really like go out there and like really advocate for organ donors. Cause it's like, well, wait a minute. Didn't your child like pass away within a year of receiving her bowels? It's like, it just like really gets me really upset. Cause I'm like, she did, but she had like the most successful bowel surgery, and it has nothing to do with why she passed away.
This is your moment. I think it's really important, it was nothing to do with the donor.
No.
You mentioned it was something to do with her lungs.
Yeah. And we're still like, my brain is, grief really likes to rob your memory.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I'll go through these like waves of like questions, and then like, oh yeah. And like, I'll kind of bounce things off my husband, but like we had a meeting with Bella's doctors. And so if I can remember correctly, like when we sat down and talked with her physicians from Sick Kids about what ultimately caused her to pass away, there's a big unknown there. We know it was her lungs failing, and we know that what happened with her lungs was this shutdown that was inevitable. Yeah. They threw everything at her that they could, and we're talking Sick Kids. We're talking the best of the best.
Best hands in the country.
So yeah, best in the country. And so they were like, there was really nothing they could have done. they've never seen this before, and they told me they likely would never see this again in their career. And so it's like, okay, there's closure in a sense that they were like, there was really nothing they could do with this lung failure. But there's still a lot of unknowns because of the rarity of her conditions, of why it started, or exactly why it took off when it did and couldn't get fixed. And so I forget exactly what they called it. I probably have it written down in one of my journals.
Okay.
But basically, if I can make this sound somewhat understandable. So when Bella was born with SCID, she had a very, very rare form of that. Like there's like 20 forms of SCID, and they had never seen the form she had. They guessed at what it was exactly for a while. They came up with omens. Oh, someone's trying to call me. No way. I'm in the middle of something. That was weird. That's never come up before on my screen. Okay, anyways. So when she was 1 and she had the bone marrow transplant, she got a new immune system, and it was successful. But when you get a bone marrow transplant, so Bella had her immune system, which was like non-existent, not working. So you wipe out anything left of what she had, what she was born with, to make room for the donor's immune system, the donor's bone marrow. And with a very, very successful bone marrow transplant, Bella would have become 100% donor cells. But she was mixed.
Okay.
Which is fine. That was the reason why she needed IVIG monthly. So she needed the infection fighter boosters, because she was a mix of still the donor's immune system, which gave her 100% T cells and virus fighters, but she still had a little bit of her immune system in there. Okay. So bringing in a bowel, and if you know, the bowels have their own immune system.
Yes.
So the biggest risk with this bowel transplant was bringing in a third immune system.
Okay.
But they were very confident that, it's 9 years out since she had the bone marrow transplant.
Absolutely.
Her immune system is, although mixed, it's established.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the risk with a third immune system from the bowels causing problems was very, very low. And as far as they know, their best guess is that it could have been something to do with that, and it just chose to attack her lungs. And from there, her lungs had no chance. It was 3 immune systems fighting, and it caused lung failure. But it's very hard for them to accept that, given it was 9 years past her bone marrow transplant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the bowel transplant being so successful.
As successful as it was.
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing is, you can go down this big rabbit hole of trying to make sense of it, being the medical moms that we are, and now grieving moms as well. You just want answers, and that's what you got used to doing, is fighting so much during this time in hospital or out of hospital, is trying to fight. And it wasn't until a friend of mine said shortly after losing Gwen that some things are just not meant to have an answer. Some things are really, really shitty in this life, and they're not meant to always have an answer. And even then, I'm like, no, I need to know. She was thriving, just like Bella. She was handed so many things for so long, and then she was finally given an opportunity to be a kid, and we were doing real kid things. So to have this taken away, and really, and I know when young children die, it is so hard to pinpoint different things. But you just want to have answers. And I think even if we did have a definite answer, I don't think you would want to accept it anyways, that they're gone. I think, and I know you're much, you're fresh in your journey. And I'm sure you know that the whole stage, 5 stages of grief, is bullshit.
Right? Yeah. My husband and I, we've discussed that so much, not only with our grief therapists, but we explain it like we really talk out our grief on our podcast, and we really find it
Mhm.
therapeutic. Because it's like I mean to be in a marriage and we're both grieving and suffering our same little, human. Um, we really just want to help other parents going through the same thing. So we talk about it, and I don't think it gets talked about a lot
No,
in that
absolutely.
sense. Yeah. And so we were just like, yeah, this is BS. And like our therapist was on board with that too. He's like, yeah, it is. It's not stages. And we were like, let's come up with a new name for this. And we're like, yeah, because it's not stages. It's like seasons that intertwine
Yes. Yeah.
and they come and go
Yeah.
at different times. And it's definitely not a stage that you upgrade from or pass through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think again with our society, I mean, in other cultures, like death is celebrated. I mean, look at Day of the Death in Mexico. It's where they remember, and for them, their loved one isn't gone until you forget about them, and you never forget about your loved one, so they're never truly gone. But with our society, it's showing up in black and mourning and then kind of moving on. But there is no moving on from this. Um, and I think, for me, after losing Gwendolyn, it was okay, searching again, going to Google and saying, once I finish this stage and once I finish this one, I'll be healed. I'll be magically healed. Um, but like you said, it's seasons. It's grief is a bad house guest. She comes unannounced and you sit with her and you cry and you laugh and you scream and you remember, and then she goes, only to kind of come back again. So, and until you really, I feel like, surrender to that or try to kind of surrender to it in
Yeah.
whatever way possible, it can become very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I found too with that, like in this journey so far, it really matters a lot to talk about it to anybody and everyone. Like I'm just so thankful I have my husband. I can't imagine what like a single parent would have to go through.
Yeah.
To have like an excellent therapist, to have an amazing support system of friends and family, and our online family that has been, I mean, they're grieving too. And they've been absolutely amazing. But even like my grief therapist told me something. I've never been much of like a journaler, but two ways that journaling actually really helped me is I was really, really frustrated in the beginning with the amount of memory loss. And so my husband and I came up with a note section in our phones. And anytime a memory would come up, we'd quickly jot it down in our phone note section.
Yeah.
So we could go back and refer to it.
Yeah.
And then another thing our grief therapist helped us with was I was dealing with a lot of frustrations with how other people perceived my grief or how they treated me after Bella's passing, and just a lot of anger and frustration. I was like, what do I do with this? I'm like, I am exhausted. How do I solve these problems? And what do I do with people that don't freaking get it? Mm-hmm. And, because I mean, my whole life has been advocacy. Yeah. And I just want to like give up on some people and feel like you're not with it. Yeah. And he's like, write it down and then do something with that paper, physically do something with that paper to let it go. He's like, you can burn it, you can rip it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like do something physical with it.
Yes.
And symbolize you letting that go, you not being able to change it, but you still recognizing it and dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. And I can resonate with the whole like not remembering things, and it still frustrates me. Shock is a beautiful thing in the fact that it does protect us, I think, of dying from a broken heart in those first few months. But it's scary. Like when you go into a form of disassociation and you're there, but you're not there, it's a very real thing. And it is very scary not being able to remember things. And I think, throughout your journey of the whole grieving, things will come more to you as time goes on. Be prepared, because it's, I think, it sounds like you've been living such a life of fight or flight, within the journey of being in hospital and even out of it, and now trying to grieve this new, who are you, right? Who are you now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big part of it. I've been I've found comfort like in carrying on her legacy in ways that come easy, in ways that she would be proud of, in ways that she would do if it was her planning it, doing it. And I find comfort in that too. It's more of like the normal day-to-day things that I'm just like, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to get up and go back to work, go back to teaching. Like my husband's just like 2 weeks in back to work.
Yeah.
And there's just parts of like the world moving on that just don't feel right, but you have to do it anyway.
I think, it's like the sun, will still set and the sun still rises, and like what a beautiful thing. But when you're in the thick of it, it's just like, I don't want any of those. I don't want the sun to set. I don't want it to rise. Like my daughter's not here, our daughters aren't here. And I think I worked closely with a grief therapist. And it wasn't until she said, you need to realize that two things can coexist. Grief can coexist with joy, and it can coexist with happiness. And before grief came love. And that's such a beautiful thing, I think, in the sense of this love is all like to have for somebody, and to be able to grieve it is such a rare and beautiful thing. So you said, like you've been doing grief counseling and journaling. Is there anything else that you find has been helping you navigate this kind of new time in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had in the thick of it with Bella in hospital, I really want to thank my mental health nurse at the time, and just making sure I get the therapies that I need, because that just wasn't the case for me in the first couple years of Bella. And then booking sessions with a mental health nurse and going through that talk therapy, it's something I wish I would have done from the start, like as soon as possible, because there was so much trauma she helped me live through and work through in ways that nobody else could. So that kind of specialty, just being able to get a hold of that and get a hold of that as soon as possible, as soon as you recognize it or a family member recognizes that you need it. It was difficult for me because I was living a province away from home, and I couldn't leave the hospital to book myself a doctor's appointment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like once I finally got there, and the years of talk therapy with her set me up for being able to deal with really hard things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was huge for me. And then the same kind of thing happened with when Bella passed away, was just having immediate access to a grief therapist wasn't the case. And I'm thankful to be working with the hospitals right now. Alberta Children's is doing a really good job of helping change that. And Sick Kids is aware of it too, but just being an out of province parent whose child passed away in your province, to then not have any sort of immediate grief supports was devastating beyond words. And so
it got alone, right? Again, you have all of these people coming at you, and then they pass, and it's like, why haven't I heard from anybody?
Yeah.
Why haven't I heard from a single soul? Or what about me now? What am I left to do?
Well, and even just the process of traveling home and the energy to not know what to do next. Like, so now I didn't have the energy to call my doctor, book an appointment, go to the appointment, not be able to do any of this online or over the phone.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to do any therapies over line or over the phone, it would cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just to even know that I needed to muster up energy to get to my doctor and be like, I need grief therapy, and for him to do one in a local grief therapist, find out where that is, get myself there and start that was like, that took months. When it shouldn't be that way,
No.
So thankfully I had that previous talk therapy with a mental health nurse, but not everyone has that kind of tools in their toolbox.
And it can be such a scary thing, because when you are in the thick of things, and to think how isolating grief is, and like you said, how people treat you and your grief, it really does it's almost like and I feel bad, because again, it's society and how we were taught to handle grief. But there's people that say, well, aren't you over that yet? it's been so many years or months, or, you know, almost scared to bring it up, you know, and it makes you almost feel awkward to the point where like you have to care to that for that individual. So I think it's so important, and I feel so that like sad for people that don't have access, like you said, because it is to even just recognize, you know, there are going to be grief births and grief triggers that come in your day to day, and you could be driving down the highway and a song comes on, or a scent is a big one, and it just takes you back to be able to be able to how to navigate those in those moments and know it's going to pass is so like crucial for healing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
100%. This is a really important one. What do you think she taught you, Bella? And, you know, just like kind of moving on to like the reflection and legacy. I know for myself and many others, like Bella was like a pure joy. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier, like when we first connected, a friend actually reached out to you guys. And when Gwendolyn died, and you made a video, Bella and you, for myself, just, you know, saying, expressing your sorrows, because Gwendolyn also was a patient at Sick Kids. So I walked the hallways. I've done the things, you know, very different stories, obviously, but I can resonate with you in so many ways. So like, what do you think she has taught you through her strength and her love of life?
I know she definitely, she taught me how to find joy through fear. I think that was the biggest thing. Like, she would show me over and over again on her own things that would be terrifying to most kids. She did them with a smile.
Yeah.
And she did them with confidence.
And with attitude. Like, she was just like, I'm owning this place. I'm going to be a CEO someday. Like, this is me.
Yeah. And just the ability to find strength from within. Meanwhile, you have this medical mom throwing things at you like, this will help, and I'm here, and this. And she was just like, I got this.
I got this, mom.
I got this. It's fine.
Yeah.
And so just to just like know what she was actually going through, and then to see the smile on her face, to go to school or to hang out with her friends, or the simple things that caused her so much joy while I knew she was in so much pain, taught me to like zip it and stop complaining.
So true.
Like, that was the biggest thing she taught me.
It's so true. Like, the nurses and I, like with Gwendolyn, we would be like, she's going to be a leader of a cartel someday, or a CEO, because of the way, and she's like, you know, and the attitude these kids possess and have, and it's more or less like little things don't matter.
Yeah.
You know? And I think when you lose a child too, you realize like things that are just little, they really aren't what life is about. You know, they really aren't.
Right.
It's those allergies.
I know. It's like, it's like that little tickle. It's like, hello, I'm here to stay.
I'm back again. Well, I mean, Kyla, to just finish things off, I mean, it's been so wonderful talking to you, and I feel like I could just talk to you forever and ever, and I truly wish we lived closer together.
I know, right?
Maybe one day we'll meet up, but if someone is listening who's in the middle of their own storm, medical or grief, what would you want them to know? Take your time with this.
Goodness.
We've done well.
I got my lozenge in. My water. Have patience.
Yes, have patience. That's something we're not good at, or I'm not very good at.
Okay. I want them to know that there's so much healing in helping others. Be vulnerable. Just be vulnerable. When you know your truth and you understand what's right, and you care with such like a powerful heart, the right people are going to recognize that, and you'll find support and you'll find love. It's really, really hard to do, but you really have to be vulnerable to get through. I found that most of the times when you feel like this is too hard, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
It's like 100 people behind you that can't. So if you could just, almost in a sense, like suck it up and get through it, you're helping so many people.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm.
And I really found a lot of healing in that, yeah, it's hard to be online. It's hard to share such intimate moments, but I know there's other medical parents and other caregivers out there that are struggling too, and they don't have the energy to talk about it. They don't have the energy to look for resources. And if I could muster up just a little bit and do that for them, then I can not only help them, but help myself too.
We're a community. And you know, and I always say this, it is the hardest community to be a part of, but it's one of the most strongest and most loyal community to be a part of. So, on behalf of myself and so many people, thank you for sharing your journey with us and being a bright light in all of that you do. You mentioned that you're working with hospitals to continue that advocacy and the grief support. So I think that is so incredible. So thank you so much again for being here today. And I hope you feel better soon. For people that allergies are thick right now. We welcome springs with full arms, but not seasonal allergies.
I know, I'm so sorry. Like coughing all over your podcast.
Well, I give you the best, and I wish you, so much more on what's to come. I think, it's only the beginning, and like you said, turning your pain into a purpose, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So thank you again for that.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. This is so meaningful and helpful, and I'm so happy we could connect again and like on a deeper level, and please keep in touch.
I most definitely will. I'm definitely fangirling right now. Kyla, before we finish, can I just get a picture of us smiling quickly? We always get photos of our guests and ourselves, but this one we'll have to do until we meet.
Yes.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I will definitely be in touch very soon with all of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mel.
All the best.
Okay. Take care.
Take care.